NOMS CFO is a department within the National Offender Management Service which draws down money from the European Social Fund to fund additional resettlement services for offenders, but also there is an opportunity within that money to do more innovative market development work, and the Social Enterprise Consortia building is an example of that.
It is this current context of less resources, tighter budgets, that's actually encouraged people to begin to think, well, do you know what, maybe we should begin to look at how we work better together, how we collaborate more.
I'm interested in getting to the bottom of what shape this consortium is going to take.
I think for the consortium to work properly, we've all got to be sure that we have chosen between us and, in an equal way, that is the best for us. We want everybody to understand what our consortium is about, what they're going to get out of it, what the clients, what our relationship will do. I mean, it's to carry everybody with it, and I want to make sure that whoever involved in the process has a clear understanding of why we're all here and what we're going to do.
The marketplace, of course, is opening up across public sector, not just NOMS. So we were very keen that the social enterprises that emerge from this programme can not just look to NOMS for contracting opportunities, but they can look across the public sector.
What we wanted to do was build upon the collective expertise within the consortia, so that when they came to us or when they came to other departments, other public sector organisations, further down the line, they would have a kind of strength and an ability to market and sell themselves as someone who could take a little bit bigger piece of business and be able to deliver better social value, a better return on investment for the taxpayers' money.
I suppose what I want to see out of it is that at the delivery stage, we do have that holistic approach with consortium, that we are thinking about that whole client in all their needs for their future.
We're talking about sort of social inclusion, social justice, sustainability in its wider sense, not just on green issues, but within society generally. You take that as a core, you can build in all of this other stuff around it. And we also took the opportunity of building in some work around social value and social impact.
You're not looking for innovative business models per se, but you're looking at innovation and how you use those business models to deliver the social value.
So government would be saying about innovation in terms of financial models and social impact bonds and all that kind of stuff.
When NOMS put out the call for some consortiums, local, national, etc., one of the big themes there was innovation. We don't want a standard lead provider model subbed out to a lot of small organisations who hang on the coattails. We're looking for a more inclusive, participative, empowering model where the bigger providers cascade capacity down to smaller providers, so we get this sort of overall growth and we get the capacity building benefits of consortium, not just the contracting, compliance and efficiencies that way. So they were looking for the best of both worlds.
What I'm hoping with this is that it's so broad that the real creativity will shine through, and that it won't just be a question of, oh yes, you want this many outcomes, we can do this, and we'll do it in this particular way. They've actually got to invent something here.
We've really got to have some quite serious conversations about the sort of the decision making and how it sort of works to achieve all these things, and not to be shy of having difficult conversations. And to have them in the room and to not have them outside, because I think that's important.
Although there'll be probably 15 winners, if you like, at the end of it, who will get the funding, the other 30 will at least have had the opportunity of working together. They'll have had access to some of the technical support from all the various agencies that are going to supply that. So at least they'll have been through a bit of a process, and they may decide then, well, that's it. It's been hard work and we haven't got it, so we'll go our separate ways. Or they may think we've got the basis of something here.
In building these consortia, there is no guarantee that there's any work going to be coming from NOMS, or that you will win that work. And you don't know what that work may be or may not be in the future. So that is a difficult and tricky proposition.
At the moment, the share of the contracted income available into the voluntary community social enterprise sector is tiny.
And whilst in the background there was a lot of narrative around big society and localism and wanting more services delivered by locally based organisations, the way in which government continues to procure services is going in the opposite direction.
Old work's gone, and it's how we develop and deliver services in a kind of new environment. It requires new ways of working, and people like me saying the word business model and keeping a straight face is part of that as well.
To me, Consortia is about saying, where are the skills that we need, and how do we actually honestly and in trust put together skill gaps across a bunch of organisations to create a greater whole.
It's a vehicle for future work, future projects, future services, and that's all it is, nothing more or less.
And what consortium working helps us to do is keep those organisations small so that they can maintain roots with their history, but kind of glue them together so they can work within those communities where they have the reach and where they have the values and that identity.
And the fact that we called it more than the sum is really down to saying, well, collectively you're all achieving all of this, but actually what can you do if you work together? You know, what's the added value?
You know, through consortia, through partnership working at a local level, there is the opportunity to bring expertise together to develop and build enterprise, and I think that's really key.
It is about actually running a business with all the cash flow problems, the pricing, the negotiations with the contractors, in an uncertain world. You know, I mean, if you're trying to get vendors into employment when there's a massive recession on, that makes life pretty difficult.
I expect that most of these consortia, if you decide to set up an SPV, it will probably be a CIC, possibly a cooperative, a membership cooperative, and maybe a charity, but I think it will probably be a CIC or just a company limited by guarantee.
Part of the problem, I think, has been lack of understanding of what social enterprise is.
I've always been amused by this capital S, capital E, as if it's a proper noun or something.
It's trading for social benefit.
It is a business. It's not. It's gone past the stage, hasn't it, eating coffees in hospital. What I think we all are enterprising organisations.
To us, it's an approach.
Some happen to be registered community interest companies or others aren't, but it doesn't matter. It's the state of mind that we're all up for running contracts or something of that sort.
To me, there just has to be two elements to it. It has to have some social element and it has to have some enterprise element.
We've very much more been focused on the kind of social value that we bring about.
But it's about building a sustainable business, because if you get that business right, then you'll be able to deliver your social outputs.
It is kind of in conflict because we do have to make a profit and we do have to survive and we do have to be sustainable. So the two don't sit nicely together, in all honesty.
And I think a lot of social enterprises don't realise that. They put the social bit first, rather than, it should be enterprise social, really, rather than social enterprise, I think.
My view is that the binding thing is what defines social, is what they do with the profits.
And I actually quite like the term not-for-profit.
Yeah, but it's also a bit more than that, usually. It's about, are the outcomes of that business good outcomes for the community?
If I was controversial, I could say, well, there's lots of other businesses that do that anyway, that are just limited companies. I'm at the point of making a distinction between social enterprises and enterprising organisations.
The regional social enterprise organisations have adopted the social aims, trading and social ownership.
If it's all about the end user and all about the poor person, then actually what you're going to do is forget your bottom line, so you're never going to make any money and be completely grant reliant or fail. If it's all about the top line, you can completely forget about the people that you've got in your business, and you're never going to actually give any good to the people and give them any training or support or opportunities or anything else, so they'll never develop. So why do it? So you have to have an eye on both and mix it in the middle, but it all comes down to what product, what market, what service, what pricing, what skills are required, etc.
There needs to be a logic articulated in the bid as to why you've come together, who's going to contribute what, where the added value is. And you're right, the money is then to enable you to put those systems in place to enable you to deliver that.
The first thing I want to talk about, which is something that is very important but is often overlooked, is actually how closely aligned the culture of the different organisations within the consortia are. The organisations might be very similar, but I would imagine that if you were very, very similar, then you wouldn't need to actually join up. This is all really important to at least understand where your consortia partners are coming from before you can sit down and think about, right, well, for our consortia, what are our values going to be, what are our services going to be, who are our customers? Because if you're two very different, or three, four very different organisations, then you're going to be approaching it in a different way.
I think that you've got to start from clarity of purpose.
Why are we here? Why do we want to be here, and what are we trying to achieve?
The purpose was clearly defined by NOMS to increase education and employability, and I think that each part of a consortium should say, how can what we do contribute to that purpose?
Heart and vision actually is the core of it. If you have a heart for what you want to do and you've got a vision for how you can do it, then you can work from there.
The principal difference that you've got to agree on right from the off, though, is the underpinning ethics and values of the organisations. If they're not compatible, then forget it, because it's never going to work.
We've got shared values, but there are then, different organisations have other values as well. But it's the ones that you form around, which is the shared value and the core value of the consortium.
Does every organisation you work with have to share everything that you have in your heart and in your vision? No, it doesn't. But does it have to understand and comply with and support your heart and vision? Absolutely, yes, it does.
One of my worries of models like this with NOMS is that people are going to leap straight into legal structures. They're going to set up things, they're going to pay for companies, but they haven't built the relationships, the knowledge, the trust and confidence through other things. My gathering is of this is that you've done some of that already. Would that be a perception for some people? Yeah, I'm not assuming that. And I think that does give you that really strong foundation.
In the past, a bid comes out and people say, ooh, actually, yes, we could be blue coat with yellow spots today and tell everyone we do that. And actually they're changing the baseline value of that organisation just to win a contract.
The tricky bit about how we work with a range of organisations is understand each one comes from a very different community. Different people have different values, they'll be reflecting those organisations. It's understanding that those values aren't necessarily about the people involved, it's about that's a good organisation who's articulating the voice of its community.
The end game is the people, and that's the value of all organisations.
Works much better if it's people you've already built those relationships with, you've already got a certain level of trust within your core.
The more successful ones, well, maybe, from my perspective, would be those that are quite eclectic in terms of the organisations that are participating, and it's not just a group of people coming together because they happen to have met or they know each other anyway and they go, well, have a go at this and draw a bit of money down. It's where they've really thought through, by participating and working together, what that extra offer would be.
We did a SWOT analysis at the beginning, which said, from Clarity's point of view, what were we good at and what weren't we good at. And then we looked at who was involved in the consortium seminars and said, right, which of those could fill those gaps.
I need to look at what I want to deliver for the offenders and for the organisation and for the services and products I want to deliver, and say, well, what do I need and who can give me that?
I've spent some time within my role looking at social enterprise to kind of find out what's out there and go and see them, see their work, see the results of that work, and also then look at what other organisations are saying about them as well.
We've been looking at organisations that have a capacity to do, have a genuine interest in taking it forward because they're bothered and they want to make that difference.
Are we setting a consortium for us? Or are we looking at the consortium being for the offender?
I think it's undeniably true that when you involve service users in business development, companies learn from their experience and they don't create something that meets the need of a system or a company. And service users genuinely learn how to affect real change.
Asking a person like myself who's an ex-offender to join in this consortium basically and be employed is important because it shows other people that there is light at the end of the tunnel. It also shows that you can turn your life around if you want to, and if people are going to trust in you and do that, then that's a big thing for the future. To come from something that's bad in your life and then go through and start something a completely different life is what we're trying to do.
We're very keen on developing the opportunity of those employees forming their own workers' co-op, so they can then potentially become members of the consortium themselves and work through work with new people coming through. So it becomes a fully mutual in the sense that service users involvement, former service user involvement directly as co-owners of their own jobs.
Involving that wider community and design and ownership of whatever it is that we're going to do to or with these individuals, I think is just as important as the individuals themselves.
When we talk about what consortia members bring to the table, they don't just bring their own organisation skills, they actually bring all their networks that they're involved in, and they can be very diverse networks.
Sometimes it's just about getting good people in good organisations together and saying, how do we fix this problem? And then something starts to emerge. And it's the emergent stuff can be much more useful than sometimes in the planned stuff.
Somebody will go, do you know what? I know this brilliant circus company. Now, I know it's, all right, hang on a minute. I know you say it's circus, but what they do is they teach people basic skills. They engage people in something that actually is enjoyable to them. It's fun, and actually they are funded by the Skills Funding Agency. So actually they do some very serious sort of qualification work. And then all of a sudden you've got a circus company in your consortium. So I think it's about those conversations really.
So one of the things that we've had to do a lot of is not actually talking, but listening. And so the key thing for us has been to listen to people and listen to what works and what doesn't work.
You will have in any consortia a bunch of organisations that really are the prime leads, and others that are, they have skill bases, but they are in a sense on the sideline or to be brought in when needed. So I think the challenge, and that's certainly a challenge we discussed the other day, is where do people sit within that decision making process.
Part of the ongoing capacity building is to start to establish, one, where people are now, what's our trigger point for somebody being deemed to be contract ready, and then what the risk for the whole consortium of them is within that actual contracting opportunity.
Provide is the most simple business model. Service provider wins a contract and then provides services against that contract.
From my point of view, as a third sector and also as a business director, I would rather be in control of something and then subcontract out, hence the sort of lead provider kind of model that we've gone for.
Managing provider hybrid, it's providing services, subcontracting the rest and also taking a management fee. Anybody see an issue with the management provider?
The lead organisation creams off all the money and the small organisations end up doing exactly what we're doing at the minute and doing things for free.
It is fraught with difficulties. It really is. That's why you must have, I think, a delivery organisation heading it up.
Because a delivery organisation's not just got to look to how do I build the relationships to create a consortium, but how do I get my own work out of this consortium as well?
The super provider is basically lots of independent providers coming together, and you set up a formal consortium. A formal consortium has legal form, as opposed to a loose consortium or informal consortium, which is a network of organisations. A network of organisations that might bid for contracts, but if it's bidding for contracts, let's say it's bidding through a lead organisation, and the lead organisation is using its own legal identity and infrastructure to bid for that contract and is taking the risk on it. This model, an SPV, one of the benefits in SPV is a shared risk approach.
Where we see it developing is almost to a two-tier consortium. You've got the original membership that can act as the management group, the board effectively in a business model. And then as and when we develop and grow out, and we'll identify opportunities on a national level, that's where we need to attract those delivery organisations that we think have something to offer.
We should be open to membership in terms of bringing people into the opportunity, but when it comes to bidding for a particular contract, the people who will go forward into that contract are the people who can work together, who do have the capacity and are able to deliver on that particular contract.
Quality assurance is a key part of the membership process, to be rigorous, make sure the organisations come on can actually manage risks and manage all the issues that are related to delivery of that service.
A lot of I think the challenges over the period while the consortium development process is being established is to have some clear idea of what you're actually going to do and what sort of contracts you're going to bid for. Are they the same as the current ESF programmes, or are they different sorts of contracts with different requirements that will require different levels of participation by the members? And I think to some extent, that's why you've got to have a flexible structure that enables, and a structure that enables good governance of how those decisions are reached between the members. You've got to make sure that the process establishes those from the outset.
You need some sort of leadership, and I think that really matters in the consortium.
And actually agree some sort of methodology that says we trust that person.
If somebody doesn't lead it, somebody doesn't have a heart and a vision for it, if somebody doesn't have the passion, the drive for it and create the business plan, then you'll end up creating a camel. And what you want is a horse.
It's a bit like when you get together with your mates and you decide to go out for dinner. You don't say, I'll drive. Somebody else doesn't say, I'll pay. You know, you have to say, well, who's going to drive it? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that?
If you are going to set up an SPV, these are the kind of initial questions I would expect you to be asking. How to involve the stakeholders in the structure, who the voters are going to be, i.e. the members, and what the relationship will be between the people at the top taking the strategic decisions and then the people running the day-to-day.
The way we've started off on this, carried on with this, is by collective agreement, not management by a lead or a body or by a management committee. Everybody's the same input, everybody's input is valued. You know, I'm not being naive, we do disagree at times, but at the moment we've been able to resolve those and keep back to the you know, what is our aim, and then work back from there.
It's quite a good sign when the people within your consortia are quite prepared to say to you, look, you need to get on with this, you need to be managing this, you need to be leading it, and we need to give you the permission to do that.
I talk to the partners and I say, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want. Are you happy to be involved? Yes, we are. Okay, on these terms? Yes, we are. Tick the box, no more decision to make.
But you still need challenging and you know, the best thing about leadership is that you get lots of people to give you lots of ideas.
We've done it deliberately that way because it also keeps it incredibly streamlined, very simple and incredibly accountable. You've only got one place to go if there's a problem, and then you've only got one person to make a decision if there's a problem.
We will have a governance structure over the consortium, which will be a project board, and we will also have some kind of strategic advisory group sitting kind of underneath that.
A key decision-making point was who should be on the board of directors and whether we should have non-exec directors and how many of them there should be.
Each of the four kind of directors or business leads, myself, Stuart and our other two colleagues that have set up the consortium will be sitting as members of the new community interest company, and our respective organisations will have voting rights to vote a member of their organisation onto that board.
When I go into the board meeting, I'm not there for my own organisation, I'm there for the consortium. That I have to kind of really think about that as well. And I don't know how, if I'm completely honest, I don't know how possible that is.
The governance part is the bit that says, this is what you said you're doing, let's make sure that you don't drift and you don't stray from your purpose, and you make sure that you have good, clear, measurable objectives so that you can achieve what you set out to do, and that we will make sure that you're doing it legally.
It's about generating a profit, a realistic one, that enables that organisation not only to sustain itself, but actually develop new products, new ways of working with people for their social benefit.
I think the importance is around the definition of the word profit. And when companies genuinely build in real social value to what they're doing and count that as important to their profit as they do the bottom line, and if you can find a way of bringing those two things together, then actually you've got a very successful social enterprise.
If you actually want to see this from a commercial viewpoint, you're always going to get those that are near job ready and actually worth something, and at the other end of the scale you're going to get those who are never going to be worth anything to anybody. So how do you legislate for covering everyone if you're just coming at it from the point of view of this is an offender and they're worth this much and this is the market and you've got to take them? The problem with doing it this way is you're risking creaming off the best because those are the ones that are commercially viable and then leaving the worst. So how does that then stack up for offender management or for the government for all their targets of getting people back into jobs and employment?
The winners will be those who create the market as distinct from chase the market.
Because one thing is certain, NOMS isn't going to give us money forever.
In the past, what you would have had is somebody would have given you a grant and said, great, go and spend 100% of the money we've given you, give us a little evaluation at the end, or perhaps achieve a few outcomes, and we don't ever want any of our money back. and even if you weren't successful in delivering that grant, it would have been very, very unlikely that you would have ever been chased and pursued for any of that money to be returned. Where we're moving to now is where people are giving you money and they are expecting a market rate of return on that money. So regardless of what you achieve and deliver, they are still expecting some kind of financial return, and it may be that that financial return is compensated for slightly because of the social returns that you're able to offer, but in most cases what we're seeing is that much more of the financing that's coming into the sector is coming through loans or other money that's repayable, and where people are expecting some kind of financial return on it.
There's real dangers for organisations to get involved in consortiums, to get involved in contracts, then find out, because the emphasis is on payment by results, that they start to run out of money paying their staff before they deliver the results and then get reimbursed. And that actually, has caused a number of organisations to crash.
I think payment by results is interesting because we haven't done one yet, because we can't fit payment by results into what we want to do socially and ethically. We can't find one that's got enough resource that allows you to do both. I think the minute you go into payment by results, you're into the mincing machine. You're into dropping as many people through at one end to get whatever you get out at the other.
The payment by results contract culture, in my view, is beginning to, in some respects, ask for results which is not possible to deliver with the limited funding available. And I think, again, there's a learning experience there, both for the organisations delivering the contracts and the commissioners, to actually learn to commission something that is achievable to deliver with the money that's available.
We've had tenders out in the last few weeks that we've looked at, whereby it says 15% of the scoring is down to what added social value you can create.
You should be very clear amongst you why you exist, who you're working with, what you're aiming to change, how can you measure that change, and what information do you need to collect to identify that change.
I know that if I work with a woman who's suffering from depression and I help her to feel better about herself and she visits her doctor less, that puts less strain on that GP surgery, which puts less strain on that community and that PCT, which puts less strain on the National Health Service, which puts less strain on the people who are out there earning money and paying tax.
If it's costing 50 grand to keep someone in prison, and you keep them out of prison for 2 years, and that's an outcome, then you should be paid for it.
Do you know what your anticipated outcomes might be? I think everybody in this room will be aware that we're moving from measuring outputs to measuring outcomes, payment by results, etc.
We live in a capitalist society, and let's not pretend, we're not bartering goats and things. It's all about money. Money is the way that we measure things.
Yeah, it's the balancing act, isn't it?
Because in the end, we all work for social enterprises because we want to improve people's lives, and it's not about measuring people's lives and spending your entire life measuring, and a very small proportion of your time delivering.
I don't think it should be seen as a sort of like an onerous task or a requirement that's got to be done for some compliance reason. I think it seems to me to be an opportunity to really demonstrate the purpose of the sector.
Social accounting and audit is it provides you with a framework to use existing documentation or go out and consult your stakeholders, fill the gaps in the data you've got. They produce a manual and a CD, and the CD is just full of questionnaires and advice and pointers and plans and the tools you could use to go and gather your data.
How do you disentangle your impact from the things that other people are doing? Any individual involved, whether it's a health and social care service working on changing their offending behaviour, will have impacts from a massive range of individuals and organisations. Their own family may be engaged in that, their friends, their probation worker.
You have to give some credit, surely. I mean, again, it's maybe just my background. Some credit to the offender themselves.
What's probably happened is lots of things have built up, and that's caused the dam to burst, and the pressure's built up around it. And with social interventions, many organisations work the same way. They're adding water behind the dam.
Confidence is a major, major outcome that isn't measured in a scientific way. But if you can take somebody from A to B, and you know that that's impacted their lives and people around them, you know, that outcome is massive.
Well, there are lies and statistics, aren't there?
Yeah.
And I think what this is trying to do is combine the real life stories and put a value on them, and explain how it's been done and explain the methodology so that anybody looking at it can see maybe where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are.
If you get one organisation that's done a pretty sketchy kind of analysis and come up with a ratio of 1 to 7, and you get someone that's done something incredibly thorough and stands up to a lot more scrutiny but comes out with 1 to 4, is there really the understanding of that process, of scrutinising it, of checking it among commissioners, or is it going to be, oh, well, look, their number's better, so we'll go for that?
One of the problems with social return on investment, I think that the Third Sector Research Centre came up with, it's just each organisation that undertakes one of these services does it in such a different way, they're not comparable. And if they're not comparable, how do you have an objective measure of social return?
Comic Relief or Children in Need, they do social return on investment monitoring and reporting and evaluating, all in there. They'll show you the lady from last year whose life was an absolute hell because she'd had to walk for days to get to a camp and her children were dying and all of these awful things happening, and then they'll go back the following year when they've raised millions in one night through what they've done. They'll go back the following year and they'll show you that same woman. And they'll show you how her situation has improved, her health, her housing, her family, the people around her. That's social return on investment.
We have a very simplistic way of working where we talk about having 3 buckets. So we've got a bucket of the quantitative data that we need to capture. So we do all know that we need to count the numbers of people going through, who gets jobs, how many qualifications. There's going to be a set of stuff we have to capture. Well, we set the system up that's right to do that, and that probably is about responding to the ESF or whoever. But you can't run a contract if you can't do that. Then you've got to have your kind of qualitative bucket. So this is about what can we do in terms of seeing distance travel for people, the journey that somebody might have been on. You know, we're trying to reduce reoffending, so where is somebody within that and what can we tell in terms of that? And then we've got the kind of stories bucket. So let's keep the stories and collect all the stories about the people. And if you keep it as simple as that, you can make it work for anything.
Recently we just had a social return on investment report done on a service for complex needs individuals in Sandwell in the Midlands, and that's demonstrated a £9 for £1 return to the public purse for that activity. The people who were in the service would otherwise, their history is that they've been in secure units, in and out of prison, in and out of mental health wards, and chaotic lifestyles that cost a lot of money to the public purse, but also cause mayhem to themselves and everybody else around them. So £9 for £1 is being saved for the public purse because that service exists and because we made it occur, and that's social enterprise.
Danger is that commissioners are attracted by new things that seem to be nobody's ever heard of before, rather than investing in things that are proven to actually deliver the goods. And one hopes that the commissioners have the skills to recognise what does work, rather than just something that sounds exciting and different for the sake of being different.
I think possibly that some of the funding needed to be for the delivery model as well. Because yes, you need to build your consortia, but do you want that to take 2 years?
And it took a while for us to get our heads around that, because it's like, well, why would you give us money to set up an organisation and you don't know if it's going to be, what they're going to be producing is going to be effective?
We've now got to raise, during this period, other money outside NOMS money in order to do some of those pilot on-the-ground work. And I think that's sad in a way, because it means that all the money that is potentially invested in the development process could all be a waste of public resources.
There's been a significant amount of time that's had to go into this, all at risk at the moment, because we've not even got through to the next stage.
Normally in the third sector, if you're actually pitching for something this specific, you would draw down a little bit of feasibility study money, and you would then be able to pay someone for that time, or at least compensate the organisation for the time spent on that. That's not been possible with this.
Yeah, the costs of this bid, I would have thought, are around at least half the value of the funding, aren't they? In terms of time and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And that's Yeah, is that a good investment? Let's hope so.
In many ways, this process itself has tested our partnership.
Yeah.
Our partnership has got stronger because of the challenges of this process.
What the consortium generally feels really positive about is, regardless of what happens with the offender management money, this is something that we're going to move forward with anyway.
The strongest part of the bid that we made, the part that really got us through, was the part that our consortium partners rejected.
It's a load of transferable social aims that we can put into various different bits of work.
So although we're not going forward with the NOMS bid, we probably will still continue to deliver the same service. So NOMS have catalysed that, and they don't need to spend 50 grand doing it.
I passionately believe that if we can get this to work, with all the satellite partners around the edge, we've actually got the chance to make a big difference, and that's what's exciting about it. And if it wasn't for NOMS, we wouldn't have had the opportunity.
We really do think that there's a lot of benefits in there, even if ultimately we're unsuccessful, because we will have a consortium in place and we'll continue to work together in the longer term.